900 people in... Yes. 900 million people. Half of those are speaking English as a second language. You can't hear me? I'm shouting. I feel as though I'm shouting. So what does this mean? What do you think this means? You're going into English. You have to speak in English now. How do you feel?
Bad.
Bad. Okay. Anybody here feel confident? Okay. Why? Leave the room. Leave the room. This is not for you. Okay, native English speakers will probably understand what I'm talking about. Israelis, okay. How would you define an Israeli? What's the first word that comes to mind? Loud. Okay. Anybody else? Creative. Good. Positive. Spontaneous. 50-50. Initiative. Warm. Extremely polite. He says that with his tongue in cheek. שמעתם על זה? הלשון. כן. Chutzpah. What is chutzpah?
It's an attitude.
An attitude.
Being rude.
Being rude. Gall. Okay. Pushiness. Loud, aggressive. But also, should I use this word? Having balls. In other words, somebody who's not afraid. שיש לו ביצים אומרים בעברית. That is, chutzpah is a number of things. But you've got to realize that you're meeting people that are not familiar with your culture. You're going into English, you're speaking English, therefore you're moving into their culture. You cannot think and behave as you would in Israel, as you would with other Israelis, and not offend. English speakers have a culture to their language, as do all the other languages of the world. They all have a culture. Hebrew has a culture. You've got to understand that, and you've got to realize that when you move into English, you have to switch into another culture. Now, what does this mean? English has many ways, or we call them conditionals, the use of the words would, could, may I. Very polite. It doesn't mean that the English are more polite than the Israelis. I've lived in Israel for 35 years. I was born in England, and I can tell you, you're different. It's not that you're more rude. You're just different. And English people don't understand that, and you're not understanding them. Therefore, we have a problem. If you're doing business, you want to make a good impression, which you have a very short time to do. You could be making, and most of the time you are making, a negative impression without realizing it. You're very informal in a world which is still today quite formal. Banking is a very formal world to go into. Lawyers, business other than high-tech. High-tech seems to be much more sort of relaxed, and people can dress the way they want and all that kind of thing. You can't do that in other areas of business. Your body language says a million words without you knowing it. Now, I think you said, if you have to speak in English, I
feel bad.
You feel bad. Most of you will not feel, besides the native speakers, very confident when facing a group of businessmen in English. Am I right? Who's done it?
Who's done what?
Faced English speakers in a business situation. Many times?
Many times.
And how did you feel?
Excellent.
Good. How did they feel about you?
I think the same.
Did you ask them?
I'm a native language.
Did you ask them?
Did I ask? Yes, I did.
And?
And I always say at the beginnings that my English is not so good, but at the end of the day, it was more sophisticated. Even the English I heard from the other side.
Okay. You're very confident.
Yes, otherwise I wouldn't do what I'm doing.
Okay.
It's
Do you
also an Israeli.
Is that
Not an Israeli.
is that a good thing?
Don't do generalization about Israelis.
Why not?
Because many Israelis are doing very well in the business market in their English. At
With
least in the
English.
media I was in.
Okay. Right. Good. I'm not going to argue with that.
No generalization.
Okay. But you never know about the contract you missed.
At least, as long as you do
Did they tell you why? No. They said, don't call us, we'll call you. Loved your product. Wonderful. Marvelous. Americans are very good at this. Everything is very upbeat. It's lovely. Wow. You come from Tel Aviv. How interesting. I've had this. I had a conference call with Dallas and Los Angeles. I was a hand on a computer screen. When Gidon spoke, up came a hand with the name Gidon. Dallas went into hysterics. Wow, I've never spoken to anybody from Israel before. Well, I'm a voice on a computer. How exciting can that be? But that's the way they are. This is their culture. It's not our culture. And now I'm Israeli. Put my Israeli hat on. I teach in Bank Hapoalim on Sunday morning. People in private banking. How are you today? Oh, terrible. Sunday morning. Ugh. You'll never get that in London, Melbourne, New York. Everything's wonderful. Marvelous.
That's the way we should be. That's the way I say.
This is how they start.
Everything's very, very upbeat. With Israelis, it's the word is dugri, which is a word we cannot translate into English. It's not just being straight, direct. It's a number of things. And we had a perfect example here. We're doing well. We're doing marvelous. You know, everybody's doing. Israelis are very, very successful.
Not all of them.
Not all of them. Okay, he's super confident. Now, being super confident in an English-speaking world is not something you want to show.
It's arrogant, no? Kind
That's arrogant. He strikes me as being arrogant. As I put my English hat on now. He comes across as being very full of himself, very arrogant. I don't like that. Don't take it personally.
Don't do business with me. It's okay.
All right. I'll take my business to China. You've just missed a few $1 million. All right. You see, he's even got something to say. Very Israeli. We've never met before.
You brought him.
I didn't, honestly. So we have to think about that. Now, stereotypes. All right? We all have them. We can't avoid it. We meet somebody for the first time. We think all kinds of things about the person. If you were to meet an American, what would you think? What would the first word that comes? I'm going to meet an American, or an American's coming to my office now. What would you feel?
Loud, big.
You'd feel he or she was loud?
Most of the time.
Okay. Anything else? Have we got any Americans in the room? Okay, let's hear it. They're sitting at the back.
What would someone here do?
What?
Even it's funny because even when I go to visit my family in the States, I start to think these things.
You do.
Phony.
Phony. Yeah. They are. Square.
Yeah.
Vanilla,
Parve. All right.
I didn't understand any of these words. What is phony?
Phony. Lo amiti.
Okay.
Parve, you understood.
Klaus.
What was the other word? Vanilla. I'm not sure what that means. I know it's an ice cream. Okay. Yes. So you're doing business with an American. Please, you've got to realize this is part of the deal you're getting. So, don't believe everything they say. What do they think about you? Israeli, Jewish, negative or positive?
They think you're pushy,
Pushy, all right.
and if you want to know what they're really saying, you need to listen to what they're saying. They'll give you a compliment, and when they get to the word, what comes after the but in the sentence, that's what they're trying to tell you. So you've done
Okay.
a wonderful job, but
But,
then you'll get to what they're trying to
that's right. So you've got to understand that. You've got to know how to deal with that. You've got to really pin them down. Don't walk away with the, we'll call you. You say, when? Okay, you've got to be much more, you've got to be aware of their phoniness. Don't take it as real, which you Israelis do this. I teach and work with the business community. I've seen this time and time again. A businessman thinks he's closing the deal. I'd better get myself on a plane and get over to New York. I read the mails and I said, whoa, wait a minute. Nobody's inviting you to New York. And he finds out this is true. And he's not going to New York for another 3 months. This is something you have to take into consideration. Cultural differences. Now, it varies from English-speaking countries to English-speaking countries. In Europe, it's a little different, although we're seeing this sort of Americanization taking over in European countries as well. This very sort of exciting, upbeat attitude to everything. Europeans tend to be a little more honest and a little more direct, but you know, it's still there. Your body language is very important. You're saying a lot of things. The gentleman here said he's not feeling comfortable. I'm sure if he was having to give a presentation in English, we would see this. I teach some high-ranking officers in the Israeli military. In Hebrew, okay. In English, yeah. No. Okay. This sort of stare. A lot of you, when you're faced with an English speaker who's talking to you, you do this. You're doing it now, I can see some of you.
Concentration.
You're concentrating. I know that because I'm Israeli. If I am an American, what does this mean?
Staring. This is staring.
I don't know, I don't understand you. Watch two Americans speaking. What are they doing? She's smiling at the back. Go on, speak to me. Say something.
Good morning.
Hi, fine, how are you?
Oh, just great.
Yeah, you having a good time here?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Is it the head? The head's moving, the body's moving, he's, you know.
Dancing, playing.
Yeah, he slept 4 hours last night. His children kept him awake. He probably wants to go and have a strong cappuccino or something, but he's having a good time. He doesn't show his feelings. All right? So when you're using English, always be very much more sort of upbeat and smile a lot. I mean, you're not smiling at all. Playing on his computer. Smile. Be positive. Everything's wonderful. Forget about all the problems you have. Okay? Sorry, something's wrong with the electrical work. I feel as I'm going to get an electric shock any minute now. All right, okay? Yeah, let's get back to stereotyping. Well, they think you're pushy. Jewish. Okay. What do you think they think about Jew? The word Jew. Is it a positive or a negative word?
Yes, Jew means to bargain somebody down.
Yeah. In the English language, I was selling a car to somebody in London, and the man said to me, "Don't Jew me." He wasn't being anti-Semitic. He didn't know I was Jewish. It's in the language. It's in the culture. So I did.
Americans aren't quite so bad.
No, Europeans are. It's a sensitive issue. I'm not saying you're going to run into everybody's going to be an anti-Semite, but they have stereotypical ideas. All of you here, except the Lovesh Kippah and the lady there, nobody in Europe would know you were Jewish most of the time. They don't meet Jews every day. And if you tell them I'm Jewish, they'll go, what do you think they'll say, most of them? Any ideas? You don't look Jewish. It's an interesting thing. They get over their media. You know, Israel's at fault here because most of the film material that the Israeli tourism department sends all over the world are of Hasidic Jews praying at the Wailing Wall. The payas and the kippah and you know, this is what they think Jews look like. But anyway, you've got to deal with that. The Israeli-Arab conflict is also in the equation some of the time. I know I worked with the army and he is now the Nisbach Tzvai in New York for the Israeli government. You're dealing with people that politically do not want to be seen to be dealing with you. Because what will other people say?
With Israelis, not with you.
Sorry?
With Israelis.
With Israelis. The British Minister of Defense at the time, David Miliband, is Jewish. He's now the head of the Labour Party. He's Jewish. But do you think he's going to allow his department to buy military equipment from Israel? Why not?
They don't want to be associated with us. It's the same in the US.
Our worst enemies in the business world, I think, in some cases, are Jews themselves.
Especially with
I don't know, I don't buy from Israel. Everybody will say I'm doing it because I'm Jewish and I'm trying so hard to be an American. I'm trying so hard to be English. Oh yes. It's a galut mentality which does exist. People are shaking their heads.
I agree with you.
So you've got to deal with that.
Absolutely.
Okay, we haven't got enough time to go into all the ways you deal with that and all that kind of thing. That's for another course. But it's there.
It's also present in the United States, but much less, because there's an inherent affinity between the United States and Israel in many issues that they don't feel ashamed of saying that they're working with Jews, working with Israelis. I mean, you see, it's kind of been cool for politicians and others to
Supporting Israel. Wait till they're... Yeah, you're right. We love Israel. I mean, I don't know. With Americans, it's hard to tell. Yes, I know the evangelical Christians will be very excited about meeting you. You know, you're the Bible coming alive in their office. Have you done business with people like this?
A lot.
They are very... Well, that's why you're so successful. You're dealing with evangelists. All right. Like I said, we can't go into every single aspect of this, but
It will happen more if you are dealing with the Mimsad people, but with private companies as well.
yeah. Israel is a hot potato. You know, it's a problem. You could find that. Yes. They are trying to boycott Israeli products now that are sold or made or grown in what is called the West Bank in English. You know that.
Occupied territory.
They call it the occupied territories.
Yeah.
All right. So, there is anti-Israel is the new anti-Semitism. It's not cool to be anti-Semitic, but it's okay if we say bad things about Israel. You've got to deal with that. You're going into, with your English, you're meeting people who think like this. I'm not saying all of the time, but I think you've got to take this into the equation. You've got to think about it, and you've got to be prepared for it.
It's a little bit oversimplified.
Yes.
Extremely.
Yes, but like I said, okay.
You're talking maybe the European side of the English speakers.
Yes.
And then the US doesn't look alike. And then if you talk to people coming from India, which are English speakers, and oh, by the way, there are over 1 billion people there, you know. They don't share all the feelings you're mentioning. If you're talking to Kenya, small country, 40 million people,
They love you.
then it's different.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
English
Like I said, it's
the 900 million you're talking about English speakers, you cannot just
They-
treat them as a
you cannot. You're right.
If you're talking about your precious UK, obviously.
My precious UK. I've lived longer in Israel than I ever lived in the UK. It's true. English speakers are all over the world. I'm talking basically about English native speakers. You go to Kenya, you go to India, places like that where English, they could be speaking to you with English as a second language. It's slightly different. But it's still something you should be aware of. The difference that going into English has. Now, one of the interesting things about Israelis is the way they hold a conversation. This is an Israeli speaking. Ba 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 ba. That's Israeli A. Israeli B is in the conversation. He's interrupting him here. He's talking. You know, you can have 5 or 6 Israelis speaking all at the same time. I would love to listen to Pop Politica. I can't because they're just all shouting. It's part of the culture. All right? And it's acceptable. It's not acceptable in English. English speakers will interrupt, but not so much. And they will show facial and body signals that will tell you that they want to say something. Yeah, right. They don't speak when you're speaking. It's rude to them. It's not acceptable. I always think it's funny. Shema Israel comes from Israel. Who's listening? It's quite interesting. You're not, you're talking. Go further east. Has anybody done business in the Far East? How do they use English?
Quite bad,
Okay.
but they do speak very little. And you can't understand what they mean most of the time.
They speak, they're not speaking.
Yes. But they are listening very well.
Say yes about everything, then you're getting an email that food changing all the
Changes. That's right. They tend to not speak when you're speaking. And if they do want to say something in their conversations, there tends to be a little bit of a pause between Mr. Wang speaking and Mr. Chang speaking. There's a little sort of da-da-da-da-da-da, pause, and then the other guy talks. Now, in today's global economy, we can have business meetings like this one, where you have Israelis, Europeans, and Orientals in the same room. Now, what's happening? Jen? What impression are the Israelis making?
Pushy. Being pushy.
Rude. Rude is the word, yeah. The Europeans are thinking, oh, they're rude, they're talking all the time. The Japanese, the Koreans, the Orientals, we call them, are not saying very much. They're not going to, are they, with all this noise going on? They're not going to say anything. So what should you be doing in this situation? You've got to have a chairman, a chairperson, who is controlling the situation, so everybody has some time to speak. And let's face it, when you have to speak in English as a second language, maybe, you'd rather not say anything. Correct?
No.
Not excellent. Good. Good. So, be aware of that. Your culture is one of speaking at the same time, and when you're faced with non-Israelis, it can be problematic. Your sales techniques are aggressive to the point of offensive in some cases. I was walking, I have a certificate to drive an ambulance. I'm a volunteer for MADA. And I wanted to see the ambulances of Shachal. They had a bit of a display in Kikar Rabin. I showed some interest. My big mistake. One of their representatives gets talking to me. Was I interested in having or making a subscription minui with Shachar?
No.
Not really. But he came at me in this style. But wait a minute, how old are you? You do know you belong to the, in other words, a long story to cut it short, he said, in about another week you're going to be dead. Statistically, and when I said I don't want a minui, and they phoned me 5 times, he said to me, Ishtagata? I wouldn't buy a minui from him if it was the last minui in the world. It was just too much. And that's something you have to be aware of. That pushiness, that desire is very good, but there's a border here somewhere. I'm generalizing, very much so. But be aware of it, all right? And be careful with it. Don't come across as being too pushy. You'll just push them away. You represent your companies. Which company do you work for, the lady who's texting? Because she's, okay.
I'm working for Chaval.
In a business situation, you would not see phones on the tables normally.
I'll excuse myself. No, I have to text that.
All right, so you can't answer my question. I'll wait till you come back. We tend to be much more open with this communication business. In a business situation, I spoke to people that come from the Boston consultancy firm. It's a company that gives assistance to banks. And they come from France and from London and from New York. And I say to them, well, what was your first impression when you came to Bינלאומי? And they go, wow, we were surprised. But the funny thing is, after a week or two, they don't want to go back. They like this sort of openness and this. They like it. But you don't have that sort of opportunity there when you're doing business with English speakers in London, in New York, okay? You don't have that. You need to understand their culture, you need to be able to speak in the culture that they're using the cultural techniques. Now, fluency of language, how important do you think this is? On a scale of 1 to 10, being fluent in English?
Close to 10.
Close to 10?
8.
8? 5?
It's very important.
From my experience, I would say it's around about 5 or 6. It's not the most important thing. No. The minute you speak to me, a businessman from Europe, I understand you're not a native speaker. within split seconds of listening to your accent. So I adjust. I know you're going to make